Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Friday, the 7th of November 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah arrives in Abu Dhabi on a brotherly visit. Allied forces carry on airstrikes against Al-Qaeda-linked group as calm temporarily returns to Kobani. Clashes escalate in East Jerusalem as the EU says Israel's settlement construction plans are an obstacle to peace. British Prime Minister David Cameron says his country will not pay 2.1 billion euros to the EU budget by next month. Hello and welcome. His Highness Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah and his accompanying delegation departed Kuwait today noon for Abu Dhabi on a brotherly visit. Bidding farewell to His Highness Emir at the airport was His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, the Minister of the Emiri Diwan Affairs Sheikh Nasser Sabah Al Ahmed Al Sabah, and the Deputy Premier Minister of Defense and Acting Minister of Interior Sheikh Khalid Al Jarrah Al Sabah. The official delegation accompanying His Highness the Emir comprised the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah, the GCC Secretary General Dr. Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al Zayani, Director of His Highness the Emir's Office Ahmed Fahd Al Fahd, and Head of the Emiri Protocol and Ceremonies Sheikh Khalid Al Abdullah Al Sabah Al Nasser Al Sabah. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah arrived in the United Arab Emirates Abu Dhabi on a brotherly visit. His Highness the Emir was received at the airport by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, United Arab Emirates Vice President and Dubai ruler, General Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the United Arab Emirates Armed Forces, His Highness Sheikh Hazza bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the United Arab Emirates National Security Advisor, His Highness Sheikh Saif bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Premier and Interior Minister, His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Premier and Minister of Presidential Affairs, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Foreign Minister and Ambassador of the State of Kuwait to the United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Salah Mohammed Al Baijan. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Saeed of the Sultanate of Oman, expressing personal pleasure and the content of the GCC and the Arab nations over His Majesty's public appearance in good health. In his cable, His Highness the Emir voiced deep content over seeing His Majesty in good health during the speech he delivered on the occasion of the 44th anniversary of Oman's March of Renaissance, wishing His Majesty long-lasting health and the brotherly Sultanate further progress and prosperity under his wise leadership. Kuwait Air Force recently celebrated the arrival of a new aircraft at Abdullah Al Mubarak Air Hall, with the attendance of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Sheikh Khalid Al Jarrah Al Sabah and other distinguished military personnel who gathered to see Kuwait's second C-130J aircraft. Reporter Badriya Al Saleh brings us this report.
The ceremony marking the completed transportation of a C-130J and a C-17 aircraft at Abdullah Al Mubarak Air Base was attended by a wide audience, including His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Sheikh Khalid Al Jarrah Al Sabah. Commander of the Air Force, Major General Yusuf Abdulaziz Al-Shaya, said the ceremony will contribute to strengthening the capabilities of the Army and Air Force in the field of strategic and tactical support, as well as shipping and supporting military operations and tasks regarding relief operations and humanitarian aid. Major General Shaya said the attainment of these aircrafts is the fruit of the efforts headed by the General Staff of the Army, officers, pilots, and non-commissioned officers and individuals, based on their follow-up to help materialize this grand project. For her part, Vice President of Boeing and C-17 Program Manager Nan Bogard said it was an honor to attend the completion of the Kuwait Air Force aircraft fleet. Bogard said it was gratifying to be part of the ceremony, as it marks the successful first steps in what will be a long and proud tradition of these aircrafts, as they're used to provide much-needed humanitarian aid and relief around the globe. On behalf of the Boeing team, she expressed gratitude to Kuwait Air Force and the U.S. government team that came together to make the transportation possible. She said Kuwait and Boeing have a partnership that spans more than 3 decades and plan to continue to work closely together to help Kuwait's leadership and defense forces enhance safety, stability, and peace in the country. With the unique and distinct paint designs in red, white, and green, the aircrafts will be spottable from afar, letting the world know that the Kuwait Air Force has arrived. At Abdullah Al Mbarak Air Base, I'm Badriya Saleh, reporting for the English News.
The United States military launched a series of airstrikes around the northern Syrian town of Sarmada near the border with Turkey, targeting Al-Qaeda-linked Khorasan group. There are unconfirmed reports that a French militant and bomber associated with the group was killed during the assault. The U.S. military struck 5 Khorasan targets near a strategic border crossing with Turkey. The attack reportedly hit training and bomb-making facilities and fighters. The U.S. military said in a statement that the airstrikes against the Khorasan group were not in response to recent fighting between Al-Qusra al-Nusra militants and the other moderate rebels. Reports said that the Syrian border town of Kobani has captured international attention in recent weeks, appeared relatively calm today. The area has witnessed fierce fighting between Kurdish forces and Islamic State group extremists, as both sides vie for control of the town. Meanwhile, a monitoring group said Iraqi Kurdish forces have blunted but not broken the siege of Kobani, a week after arriving to great fanfare with heavy weapons and fighters in a bid to save it from the Islamic State group. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the IS posts are well entrenched in Kobani, adding that Kurdish forces need more artillery to make a real difference. Clashes between Palestinian youth and Israeli forces in different neighborhoods in East Jerusalem continue amidst rising tension, and the Palestinian leadership appeals to the Security Council for a special session to prevent more incursions of Al-Aqsa Mosque and halt deteriorating situation in the Holy City. Fatima Abdul Karim has more from Ramallah.
Fierce clashes spreading throughout East Jerusalem continued overnight and today after the Friday prayers. For the 4th week in a row, the tension between Palestinian youth and Israeli forces and border police rises in the aftermath of the escalated Israeli violations against Palestinians and incursions of the Holy Aqsa Mosque complex. The clashes left nearly 10 wounded and 4 arrested.
The
closure of Al-Aqsa Mosque is almost on a daily basis, especially on Fridays. To impose a new change, they are targeting our youth with their weapons and arrests.
The clashes also witnessed new run-over incidents by Palestinians, killing at least 3 Israeli soldiers in Jerusalem in the past week. The clashes sparked a new diplomatic endeavor at the United Nations Security Council by the Palestinians and Jordanians, where they urged the Security Council to hold an urgent session to address the violations of the Israeli authorities in Jerusalem.
We, the Palestinian leadership, in collaboration with our brothers in the Jordanian side, we are undertaking a combined effort in the Security Council for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility immediately and to call upon all those in the Israeli side who are intensifying this explosive situation to stop all of these activities and policies.
In the West Bank, clashes broke out at calls to protest the Israeli violations at front lines. The illegal Israeli checkpoint of Qalandia, north of Jerusalem, witnessed also fierce clashes, leaving around dozens of Palestinians with injuries after Israeli forces used grenades and tear gas bombs. Amid the raging tensions, the Palestinians are saying their words in the streets, and the Palestinian leadership finds itself obliged to echo it in international platforms in a new challenge. Fatma Abdelkarim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. The European Union foreign policy chief said today that Israel's settlement construction plans were an obstacle to the resumption of peace talks between Israel and the Palestinian government. Earlier this week, Israel announced plans to press forward with housing construction in East Jerusalem, drawing condemnation from the U.S. and other key allies. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini made the comment in Jerusalem, where she met with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman. Mogherini also stressed that the European Union supported the efforts of having a cohesion government on the Palestinian side.
The European Union position is very clearly one of support of the efforts of having a cohesion government on the Palestinian side as a way of guaranteeing that all Palestinians can be governed and ruled by the Palestinian Authority.
The United States is considering imposing sanctions on Libya's combative factions to try to prevent a conflict fueled by regional powers from erupting into civil war and force militant leaders to negotiate. U.S. sanctions would be separate from potential United Nations sanctions that aim to pressure Libyan factions and militias to take part in the UN-backed political negotiations to be led by the UN envoy. The possibility of using UN sanctions to help bring about political talks has been aired publicly. The consideration of separate U.S. sanctions has not been previously disclosed. China and Japan today agreed to try to reduce tensions over a disputed chain of islands in the East China Sea. Beijing officials said a crisis management mechanism had been set up to prevent the situation from worsening. The strategically important islands, known as Diaoyu by China and Senkaku by Japan, are controlled by Japan. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said the ground was being laid for a bilateral meeting between him and the Chinese president next week. The meeting is expected to take place on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Beijing next week. The China Day Forum of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC 2014 today kicked off in Beijing as senior officials, economists and entrepreneurs discussed development and economic integration of the Asia-Pacific region. Topics discussed at the forum were centered on promoting the construction of the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, investment for the infrastructure construction, as well as building regional interconnectivity within the region. Attendees at the forum also discussed enhancing anti-corruption efforts to maintain stable regional economic development. The China Day Forum will also be held in Tianjin municipality on Saturday, when topic will touch emerging industries, including new energy and internet economy of the next generation. British Prime Minister David Cameron told a gathering of Northern European leaders today that Britain is steadfast in its refusal to pay an extra €2.1 billion to the European Union budget by next month. His comments came as EU finance ministers met in Brussels with the issue on the agenda. Finnish Prime Minister Alexander Stubb, the summit's host, said there was no doubt countries needed to pay into the EU, but the way in which the surcharge message had been presented was not ideal. A recalculation of the EU budget contributions has seen Britain's share grow this year, but the scale of the increase was a surprise. The standoff comes at a time of growing political pressure in Britain for the country to leave the EU.
First of all, on the budget issue, I think I have given a very clear answer, which is the two elements that I said were absolutely clear, was that we wouldn't pay €2 billion on the 1st of December, and we didn't believe in paying anything like that amount. And those are the two issues I've put on the table. I hope they can be resolved at ECOFIN. If they can be, then that'll be good, and if they can't, that will then obviously we'll have a major problem. But let's let that negotiation continue and see if it reaches a conclusion today or perhaps later. We'll have to wait and see about that.
And more prosperous.
Well, first of all, on the budget issue, I think I have given a very clear answer.
And finally, tonight, Ukraine said an armored column, including 32 tanks and 30 trucks, today crossed into eastern Ukraine from Russia. A Kyiv military official said the trucks were carrying ammunition and fighters. A fragile ceasefire has been in place since the 5th of September, although hundreds of people have been killed since then. More than 4,000 people have died since fighting erupted in April after pro-Russian separatists seized control in the region of Donetsk and Luhansk. The European OSCE monitoring mission has warned that the bloodletting is still going on, with numerous incidents of shelling. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Before we end, here is a quick reminder of today's headlines. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah arrives in Abu Dhabi on a brotherly visit. Allied forces carry on airstrikes against Al-Qaeda-linked groups as calm temporarily returns to Kobani. Clashes escalate in East Jerusalem as the EU says Israel's settlement construction plans are an obstacle to peace talks. British Prime Minister David Cameron says his country will not pay €2.1 billion to the EU budget by next month.